All right, let's start with number one. Okay, attention please. Students retain 90% of the information they hear in the first 10 minutes. Was that agree, disagree? Okay, disagree. About how much did they retain? About 70%. That's pretty good. Okay, so your first 10 minutes, man, you want to get the good stuff in there. Good stuff in there. A lot of times when people lecture, they kind of do a lot of kind of wandering a little bit, at the start. That's a key time. I'm not saying jump right into the heart of your content immediately, but you've got them pretty captive for that first 10 minutes. So get some content in there. That's your time to really kind of go for it. Number two, students retain 40% of the information they hear in the last 10 minutes. What was that one? Okay, we're sitting at about 20% at this point now. So dramatic differences from the start of it, until the end of it. All right, number three, lecturing is a superior method for promoting the learning of factual information. What was that one? Agree. You might have bit the dust on that one, I don't know. But kind of the distinction is just between factual stuff and then number four, we're getting at higher level thinking here. But lecturing is most effective when students need to analyze, synthesize, and integrate knowledge. What was that one? Okay, disagree. Definitely more of a discussion-based format, tends to work better with that. And that's why sometimes a combination of methods, some lecture things and then some discussion related. You can get at kind of the lower level skills and sometimes the higher level skills with a combination. Number five, lecturing effective method of introducing content material to students whose motivation or interest level is limited. This one's pretty counterintuitive, but what was that one? That one is actually agree. Number six, most common error of lectures is trying to cover too much material. What was that one? All right, have we all been there and done that? And that's when the eyes are glazing over, and it's when they're walking out the door and you ask them, what'd you learn today? They're just looking at you like, what just happened to me here? And yeah, get me out of here. I got to go home. But, yeah, exactly. And then just dump on them. Cause and effect is an example of an organizational principle. What was that one? That was agree. So again, going back to having some organization to what you're doing, not just completely random, is helpful. And number eight, interesting one. Note-taking by students has been shown to interfere with the learning process. What was that one? All right, we've got a lot of qualifiers here. Yeah. Technically, that one is disagree, but I agree. I think you will have some students that I think are going to learn better if they maybe don't take notes, during class. Now, it's not very many, I don't think, but I've had a few. I always have a few. I've got one in class right now. His name is Corey. He never takes notes. He sits there, just kind of listens and looks at me, and he's getting everything, that's happening. I talk to him later, ask him questions, whatever. For him, that's the best thing. So some students, they're better off just taking it in, really processing it. That works best for them. Most of them, having that active pencil in hand, kind of writing while they're hearing things, that is helpful. It becomes an interference if you are turning them into scribes, in class, and, they're just like writing nonstop everything you've got up on the PowerPoint or whatever, because when they're trying to write all that stuff down, it's pretty limited as to what's happening with them cognitively. They're basically trying to hear and remember. They're trying to hear it and write it, hear it and write it. They're not really thinking, a huge amount about it. So I would say, generally speaking, some writing for sure is helpful, but not if they're just going to sit there and write, the entire time. Anytime I feel like I've got a ton of content I have to get across, what I've started to do is I've started to write it down for them. Okay, and I actually do the same thing I did on this lecture. I could have lectured on all this content that you just read. I could have done that, but I decided let's not. So I just kind of wrote it all down. We did some work with it before. We're kind of doing some work with it now. So that's another way to go at it too. So kind of watch out for those things where it's just like too much writing, kind of on their end too. When I say lecture, usually the way it happens now is more interactive, where you've got some talking, you've got some questions, some back and forth. That technically is still going to be a lecture, with that kind of the question back and forth type thing. I think, it's hard to say when it's not a lecture, and it's morphed into something else exactly. But yeah, so it's a little hard to say. But it's, like Gretchen was saying, it's very rare now that somebody just goes at it for 30, 40 minutes straight, just you talking. Most of us, like me included, I'm not smart enough to do that. I don't know that I have 40 minutes worth of anything to say, all at one shot that I could actually remember, and pull off reasonably well. So most people do go a little more of the kind of back and forth type thing. Yep. So, but even with that though, that's where I'm really kind of urging those 20-minute chunks of time to think about. And even that experience of an interactive lecture for 20 minutes, I think we're kind of about there with it. And when I teach, I picture my students a little bit like time bombs is how I picture them. This sounds terrible, but I tell myself that when I start a lecture, whether it's interactive or whatever it is, I tell myself, I got about 20 minutes or so that I'm going to hold them here, and then I'm going to lose them. They're just going to start to go. I need to get something else coming in. And that's where I like to try to bring in some of the activities. And maybe it's super short. Maybe it's a 2-minute, 3-minute, 4-minute thing. And then I may come back and finish off class, with maybe a 15-minute, quote, lecture type thing. But yeah, but I think that 20 minutes, even with the interactive thing, can be a little tough. People really skilled at it can pull it off, though. I've seen people seriously run an entire 50-minute class that was just lecture and interaction, and there's really heavy engagement on the part of the students. Yeah, really heavy engagement. I think what a good lecturer does is I think they try to pull as much out of the people as they can. They're only saying what they can say. They're trying to get everything else out of the group, and then you're filling in pieces. And that, I think, is pretty powerful. You're hearing what people say, and you're sliding stuff in. You're sliding it in. You still know what you're trying to get across, but you're working it in here and there, in context. That's pretty powerful, that formula, I think.